there's been a couple of disciplinary incidents, haven't there? Can we talk about those?
Got a red card the last game I played.
Were they both for dissent?
The first one was for a tackle from behind, and the second was for dissent.
Have you developed a nemesis yet? That's the real question here.
I'd say my only nemesis is probably Emily Husband, I'd say.
Music career, all right. Tell us a little bit about this.
Well, he's got he plays an instrument called the bouzouki,
Okay.
which is like a Greek kind of guitar, if you call it. Yeah, our family had a pretty strong connection to Pan-Hellenic, which is Sydney Olympic.
How would you describe yourself as a student?
I would imagine that my teachers would have had an interesting time with me in their class.
What position did you play?
Sometimes left, right, out. My genuine well-being will be up for debate if I don't pick this person. It's probably going to have to be Kelly Brown, I'd say.
Hi guys, Gareth Morgan here, welcoming you to the latest episode of Glory Stories, the club's official podcast, brought to you in association, as always, with our great friends and club sponsors, Drimtel and Perth Glory, a winning combination. Now, in today's show, for the first time in this series, we are moving into the A-League women's space. We are drilling down deep into all things ALW. And as always on the show, we've gone to the very top in terms of our studio guests, because Glory's ALW head coach, Stephen Peters, is here. He didn't manage to get a haircut in time for the show, so he has donned a baseball cap. But Stephen, it is fantastic to see you here, mate. Thanks very much for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
No problem at all. No problem at all. Now, doing the research for the show, because I actually do some research, very interesting. Very interesting. You told me a couple of days ago when we were discussing the prospect of you coming in that lots of twists and turns in your football journey so far. So I think we might as well, as we normally do, just start at the beginning. Let's just get a snapshot of the Peters household, you as a youngster growing up. What did that look like? Because it's a Greek background that you've got, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah.
In Sydney as well.
Yeah, in Sydney. Our family had a pretty strong connection to Pan-Hellenic, which is Sydney Olympic. So my dad's parents actually did a lot of the admin work for Olympic back in the early days that the club was set up. So obviously Dad was a massive Sydney Olympic supporter. He played for them pretty much through all his youth and then into reserve grade, a little bit of first grade, then he basically gave up football for his music career, essentially.
Oh, hang on, music career. All right, tell us a little bit about this.
Well, he's got he plays an instrument called the bouzouki,
Okay.
which is it's like a Greek kind of guitar, if you call it. He essentially he's been a professional musician since he was 22.
Wow. Okay. So
Yep.
Your dad's playing to a good level. What about your own playing career? How did that start?
I started off with the local Greek team in the eastern suburbs, was St Spiridon Parish back then. It's now called South East Eagles, which my brother's actually the president of.
Good plug for them.
Yep. And then essentially I was never good enough to make the eastern suburbs team, which always annoyed me. And then my first representative football, if you want to call it that, was Rockdale Ilinden in under 15s. So I played in the state league for them, and then I played 5 years with Stanmore Hawks. So essentially, from 2000 to 2004.
What position did you play?
Sometimes left, right, out. It was essentially the 4-4-2 era.
Yeah.
So I would be a right winger in a 4-4-2 or a second striker in a 4-4-2 typically. And then there was one season where the coach wanted to play a 3-5-2 and I played as a wing back. So I played there for 5 years. It was a great 5 years of my life. We had essentially almost the same team every year. So I was there from 16s, 18s, 20s essentially. Didn't quite get into first grade. So then 2005 I had to look for a new team. So I went down a couple of divisions. I went to essentially State League 2 and played for a team back then was called East Coast Magic. But they merged with a team called Gladesville United, which is a Greek team. And then now you got a team in the State League called Gladesville Ride Magic. So that's what they would be the equivalent of now.
And was it at that club that you started your coaching career?
It was at that club I did my ACL.
Oh, okay.
And then that was in 2005. And then 2006 and 2007, I played no football. Wanted nothing to do with it. And then a friend of mine coerced me into playing for a local Premier League team, Sans Souci, which is in the St George competition. So I played 2 seasons there. It was actually really good. Come back from injury, and then started my coaching badges in 2009.
So you literally walked away from the game completely for a couple of years?
2 years, yeah.
Just because of the fallout from the injury?
I just lost the love for the game, to be honest. Yeah, it was just, I don't know what it was, just something just clicked, and I just said, I'm done with it. So literally for 2 years, I just travelled.
Did you have kind of coaching ambitions at all? Was it even something that you'd thought about, or were you purely focused on playing at that time? Because you're still quite young at the time.
I'd given it no thought. And then there was a lady at my work at the time who basically said, my kid's under 13s team needs a coach. Do you want to come and coach them for us? They haven't won a game in 2 years. I was like, oh, that's a good place to start. So I went down and just gave these kids a bit of TLC, and we ended up making the semi-finals, which is pretty cool. That was at Sans Souci. And then a friend of mine, Andrew Mastoris is his name, he basically said to me, I think we should start getting into coaching at a decent level, and I think we should start with the girls. Because the girls' league in New South Wales had just come in. So, yeah, we did our badges together. And then we started off at a club called Gladesville Ravens, which was amazing because basically the guy in charge he wasn't much of a football guy. He was an excellent administrator, and he gave us the A team for us two to manage on our first season, and that was pretty rare. We didn't have to be an assistant to anybody, so Andrew and I got to cut our teeth on a good opportunity early doors, and we spent 3 years there. The club got promoted. It was a really fantastic journey, and then it snowballed from there, which was brilliant.
And then, in the meantime, in your professional life outside football, you're basically a head coach now at schools? Is that what you were doing at the same time as you're coaching at the club?
Recently, I was. So how they make it lucrative enough for coaches that only coach as their profession, you would look after an age group at the school. Okay. So you get your hours for the week. So in my case, I was coaching at the King's School, which is a fantastic school in Parramatta, and I was in charge of Year 7. So essentially, I'd coach the A's, oversee the B team, and then mentor the rest of the coaches throughout the other age groups.
You'd been to Waverley College yourself, hadn't you, in the eastern suburbs? I know I'm jumping back a little bit there. How would you describe yourself as a student?
Academically speaking, or?
Yeah, academically, just across the board.
I would imagine that my teachers would have had an interesting time with me in their class. I would often be in the back of the classroom with whoever was daring enough to listen to me for an hour, drawing formations of my school teams or the teams I played for, who I think should have played where and stuff like that. So there were early signs that I had an interest in that sort of stuff. And then the teacher would come over and be like, "What are you drawing now?" I'm like, "Oh, I'm just drawing soccer stuff, sir."
But it's not just football with you, though, is it? Because we've talked about rugby league before, and you've got a bit of a passion for the league.
Yeah, look, league's something that, when you're growing up in eastern suburbs of Sydney, it's a rite of passage, essentially. You have to follow a team. It's a fantastic culture. And I've supported rugby league since I was a little kid, essentially 1991. I've been supporting Canterbury Bulldogs. And my whole family goes for South Sydney, so...
I was going to say, from the eastern suburbs, that's an interesting choice going for the Bulldogs, although they were, in fairness...
Yeah, well, no one likes the Roosters, so I wasn't going to go for them. And then South Sydney at the time were a terrible team. And Canterbury were just an exciting team. No, blue and white, the whole Greek thing, Terry Lamb. So I basically asked for permission from my dad to go for Canterbury, and he said yes, which was pretty cool. And then I've been going for them ever since.
I thought you had to ask your dad permission.
Well, sport's pretty serious in our household.
Right.
Yep. So you want to do the right things.
Fair enough. Fair enough. You mentioned your coaching badges there,
Yep.
Stephen. I'm always quite interested as to what aspects of the badges or doing the badges coaches find easy and what they find the most difficult. What was, obviously you've accumulated a vast number of badges to be in the position that you're in today. I know how involved those courses are. What aspects of the courses do you find that you are most natural for you, should we say, and what are the ones that require the most work?
I think that probably the most daunting thing for most people is presenting in front of people. And that's probably the bit that comes most naturally to me. So I was always okay with that aspect. I think the part that I'm probably not the best at, it takes me back to your question about my schooling, is probably the homework aspect. So essentially I had to learn pretty quickly that there's a lot of planning and a lot of homework on the opposition and your own methodology and your own playing style. You need to go into those quite heavily and really develop that. So I think the most important thing for me was making sure that I did the work off the field so then I could just be myself on the field.
When you were on those courses, were there any other either coaches that were studying with you or tutors that you were particularly impressed by, that you were perhaps influential in terms of moulding you as a coach a little bit?
I think on each course, you've got either an instructor that's really, really good, or you've got ex-pros that are on the course that are really, really good, and then you just learn off each and every one of them. So my first badges was a fellow named Norm Boardman who ran the courses. He actually coached the Western Sydney Wanderers women's team at one point. He was really good because I think he allowed us to have a real natural sort of relaxed vibe in the courses. This is the first two that I did, where it was all about the love of football and just bringing that to life. So that was really, really good. So I learned a lot about that in the first couple of courses that I did. Then as you progress, you go into your C license, and then on my C license I had a couple of ex-pros on there. But then on the B license I had Dean Heffernan and Leo Bertos and Daniel McBreen, and then, just to name a couple. And then you had, as an instructor, Milicic would come in as a guest instructor, and at the time he's the Socceroos assistant, so he's giving you an insight as to what they're doing on a day-to-day, and he's just a really funny guy, so you got a lot out of that. Then on your A license, the dream sort of continues. I had Zelko Kallitz on my A license, which was pretty cool. Listening to a guy who, is the only Australian to play for AC Milan. And I just don't think people quite understand how impactful that is. So you got someone like that. You take bits and pieces from each one. Rob Sherman was the instructor on the A license, who was just different level in terms of standards, in terms of the detail required. Like his favourite saying was, "The devil's in the detail," and he was just quite interesting to see some of those harder head ex-pros on the course deliberating their session with him on the field, and they're just having this heated discussion, and you're just standing back going, "Oof, I hope when it's my turn that's not coming for me." So the courses have been great. I mean, a lot of people detest them; they don't want to do them. But if you take the good parts out of them, they're really, really good.
It sounds as if you've embraced that learning opportunity, when I would think for some, being alongside former players who've obviously, as you said, played for AC Milan, played international football, I would have thought some people might find that almost a little bit intimidating, but it sounds as if you've sort of taken it the other way and actually used that as an opportunity to learn from them as well as the tutors.
Yeah, well, they obviously don't want to be on the course. Like Kallitz doesn't want to be on a course. Let's face it, right? So to have that opportunity to pick someone's brain like that's played at the top level, and just, engulf yourself in some of the stories that they've got. Like he was telling me a story about how he'd go into his first couple of sessions, he'd walk into the change room and he's got Kaká and Seedorf, and it's like, oh my God, you know. So, yeah, you just got to embrace that for what it is. You know, we have Wiltshire in our course as well, Stojovski, just fantastic. And you're playing against them in, you know, because the coaches obviously partake in a lot of the sessions. So, you know, you're coming up against, you know, five-a-side, you know, and Stojovski's up against you, and you're like, okay, no problems. In my B licence, I got past Ryan Griffiths and he hacked me. Like I 1-2'd past him and he kicked me. I said, what's going on there? He goes, mate, you're not getting past me. All right, no problems. So it's yeah, that part of coaching's been really, really enjoyable. And then it obviously tests you as well, because, you know, you've got people that have got a very good knowledge of the game, and then you believe that you have a good knowledge of the game, but then when you're deliberating your session on the pitch, you've really got to make sure that you're getting everything spot on, because, you know, you've got the ear of seasoned professionals ultimately. So it's really, really good. And I would obviously encourage every coach to make sure they go through all the steps in the courses. Like some people try and skip them or get recognition of prior learning or whatever the case. I think the courses are set up for you to go through those steps to develop your craft to being a coach.
Well, you were then developing your craft further at a practical level with MacArthur Rams. I know we sort of fast forwarded a little bit there, but an absolutely trophy-laden spell, premierships, championships, I think a 26-game unbeaten run, if I got that right. What was some of the, I know there's never one secret to success. I know there's always, you know, multiple facets to anything, but what were some of the key planks, I guess, to that phenomenal success at MacArthur?
Well, the club was already a very successful club in the past. So, and then there was a pretty significant dip in form, and going into that, I think most people were scared to go in and take that job. So call it good luck or whatever you want to call it. But I took the job and straight away recognised that the people that have had success, so Lena Karmas and Renee Rollinson and Ledbrook and Sham Karmas and these kind of people were key pillars in terms of instilling a little bit of the standards that we want to set for the club, and then just giving the group a good amount of belief. And then I really wanted to bring people in that had a point to prove around them, that were quality, and then essentially build a winning team. So the first year we actually got off to an absolute riot, and then COVID cut the season in half. So we didn't get to do anything special, and we felt like we were on a path to doing that. So then 2023, we lost Rollinson because she retired. Ledbrook played her final year. And then we went on a bit more of a underdog run that year. We made the finals and won the semi against Apia, and then beat Northern Tigers in the final. But the way we did it was very, you know, backs against the wall, roll the sleeves up, hit teams on the counter-attack, and we just had deadly players in front of goal. So then 2023 comes, and then, you know, I think most people were like, I want to play for Rams by that point. So we really, really had a fantastic side that 2023 season. And, you know, it was a completely different situation where everyone knew we were the champions and parked the bus against us and then hit us on the break. So it was a bit of an adjustment there. And then there was a period in that season where it looked like it wasn't going to come good for us. And then we went on this ridiculous run of games. The 26 unbeaten. We almost caught. I mean, Apia had a 10-point lead in the premiership, and we brought it back to 3 points, which at one point was 1 point. So we did a really fantastic job, and we obviously didn't finish premiers that year, but then we finished second, and then we made the grand final again, won it again. And then 2024 was, again, like a really, really talented side, almost like for 2023 with like a couple of changes. Alex Hun retired from our team, and then we gave a youth player an opportunity there. And then this time we started the season brilliantly, and then without our A-League players in the team, and then we had a massive dip. Apia then got to first again, and we're like, it's deja vu again here. And then we had a fantastic run where we were unbeaten for, I think it was 12 or 13 games. And then we beat Apia on the final day to win the premiership. So it was sort of 4 years in the making for that. And then it was like, or are they hungry to do the three-peat after that, you know? And then we had Sydney Olympic in the semi, which was a difficult game. We got through that. Lost a key player for the grand final. We lost Bethany Gordon for the grand final, which was an absolute key pillar for us. And then the final was a tough game, but we started like a house on fire, and then, went to penalties, and then we won on a penalty shootout in 2022. So we had the confidence we could do it. And our goalkeeper, Teresa Morrissey, for that penalty shootout was, quite confident. And, so it's just honestly, it was just a perfect storm. That team was just an unbelievable experience. And, you don't get those every day in football. And just the records that we broke, goal scoring records, clean sheet records, matches won in a row, undefeated, and then just the football we played. So, brilliant.
Off the back of that phenomenal success, inevitably your sort of personal coaching reputation and managerial stocks, if you like, are at an all-time high. How did the Glory move come about? And I'm presuming there would have been possibly other offers, maybe around the same time or even earlier. What was it about the Glory position that got you over the line, especially bearing in mind the relocation involved to the other side of the country?
Well, I actually was going through, midway through the season, I was going through the process to apply for the Canberra job. Because unfortunately, both Sydney FC and Western Sydney Wanderers have ghosted me on about 45,000 occasions. For what reason, I don't know. Western Sydney Wanderers particularly, it's a bit of a strange one. I can't quite put my finger on why. When the team I manage is in Western Sydney, and essentially half the team that was playing for them was from my MacArthur team. So,
in mind, they haven't exactly been particularly successful in ALW over the years.
Yeah, so that one was a head scratcher. So you obviously have to look elsewhere. So I looked into Canberra, and I had really, really good feelings about that. But they felt like they needed someone with A-League experience to navigate those waters, and that's fine. So I heard Alex's departure, and a friend of mine who is fairly well known around the football circles mentioned that there might be an opening at Perth, and that he said, would you be open to a conversation with Stan Lazaridis? And I was like, well, of course I'd be open to a conversation. So I didn't really think much of it because I've heard all that sort of stuff before. So I just got on with life, got on with coaching MacArthur Rams, and that was super enjoyable. And then one afternoon I'm coaching at school, and then my phone rings, and obviously I can't pick up because I'm in the middle of a session. I see a random number that I don't know, so I check the voicemail, and it was Stan left a voicemail for me. I was like, okay. So then I messaged him and said, look, I'll be home at 6 o'clock. I'll ring you when I get home. And obviously it's 3 o'clock in Perth, so he's going, yeah, no problems. So I got home, I rang him, and the phone call was just fantastic. Just the passion through the phone. The guy's just passionate about football and particularly about Perth as a city. And then, of course, Perth Glory, and then, I could just really, really feel a connection about he seemed to believe in me already when he didn't even know me. So that was a pretty special feeling, to be honest. So I just tried to ground myself and then just go with the flow. And then it pretty much within a week, I had the job.
So you didn't say yes or no on that first phone call, did you? How was that?
Well, obviously I was looking for assurances on the phone that it was like, is it me? Am I getting the job? And he obviously stopped short of giving me the job.
Right.
But I could tell that there was a really, really good experience there and a really good vibe there. And then essentially the week's wait was them going through a process of hiring process, and it was between myself and another candidate. So obviously self-doubt creeps in. You're going, oh my God, maybe the other person's better than me. Well, I'm this close, and what happens if I miss out? So that was a long week. And then obviously I got the phone call at the end of the week that they were going to go with me. And it was obviously a pretty surreal moment and then you've got to start contemplating what you're going to do. You've got to move your whole life across the country and then all that sort of stuff. So I really tried to put all that stuff to the side, and my partner was very supportive of me making that decision without thinking about the ramifications of that decision. So that was really powerful as well. And I just jumped in.
So you head across to Perth. How have you found it so far? So never mind the football, just off the field in terms of your non-football life. How's it been? I know your partner's not here, so I appreciate that's not ideal. But how have you settled in?
Look, I think Perth as a city is incredible. And I just don't think people quite understand the unique nature of it. First of all, the weather's unbelievable. Like, it's a dry heat. The humidity's fairly low. Even if it looks cloudy outside, all of a sudden it's sunny 2 minutes later and then the rest of the day's sunny. And then, to get up at 5 o'clock and the sun's up is makes just life so much easier. So that's great. Look, it's clean. The beaches are obviously brilliant. I think Fremantle's brilliant. It's a great place. Yeah, I think, genuinely, and this isn't me being all New South Wales, I think outside of Sydney, it's the best city in Australia, I think. Sydney's just so special in terms of the outlook, the harbour, and I just think people don't quite appreciate that unless you're from there. It is pretty special. But, having now been to pretty much every city in Australia, I can say that I think Perth is right up there.
Well, it's had some effect on you because you've dusted off your indoor boots. You've been back playing with a Glory office team, from what I understand. How's that been going, and is there something you need to tell us about?
Well, I tell people every time they invite me to a five-a-side or a six-a-side or a futsal team, I try to warn them that I'm a fairly passionate individual, and I just don't think they quite understand that part.
Can we talk about, there's been a couple of disciplinary incidents, haven't there? Can we talk about those?
Yeah, well, I got a red card the last game I played. It was 2 yellows, though.
Were they both for dissent?
The first one was for a tackle from behind, and the second one was for dissent, yeah. It wasn't quite dissent, to be fair. They scored a goal, and it came off my foot and ricocheted in, and the ref kind of laughed at me. So, I kicked the ball up, and there's a net at the top. So I kicked the ball up at the net.
And is that it for the game? Or is it just a 5 minutes out? Or is it gone?
Well, there was only 2 minutes left.
Oh, okay.
And just to give you some context as to how passionate I am, we're losing 7-3.
Right.
It's not like it was 2-1.
Well, thanks for your honesty.
Yeah. So I can tell you that apparently that referee's no longer refereeing at the centre, apparently. So
right.
it was,
okay.
But I don't know. We'll see. But I have warned people. Yeah, my passion, unfortunately, my brain wants to do certain things, and my body doesn't want to do certain things these days.
Well, that's interesting because I was actually going to touch on your kind of touchline persona, because you seem more likely to have a laugh on the touchline than get massively stuck into the fourth official, or throw cups on the floor or kick water bottles about. I've watched you quite closely on the touchline, and got quite a pleasant touchline demeanour, which is in contrast to. You sound like a bit of an indoor football warrior.
Look, I mean, you get a bit of white line fever when you're playing. Honestly, I've never had a fantastic temperament as a player. So, as a coach, I've worked on it for about 15 years. To not get angry, sarcastic.
Are you just internalising it? Is
most of the time, and the smiling's probably a bit of a.
It's like a grimace.
Yeah, it's more like it's a bit of a reflex, just to tell myself to calm down. But I've had 2 yellows this year, both for ridiculous things. But Yeah, look, I mean, I think that my touchline demeanour has improved significantly in the last 10 years.
Right. That's
And
good.
it's something I've worked on. So there was a guy at Football New South Wales in the state teams that used to film you on the sideline at the tournaments so you could watch yourself back about your demeanour.
Okay.
So they were interesting times. And these were in like futsal nationals, and the games get pretty heated. So, the camera's right on you. And then we'd do like a session afterwards, and then you'd watch yourself back. So you got all your peers in the same room, and you're watching yourself on the camera. So it's a good way to keep yourself accountable. So I learned pretty steeply there.
I can imagine, yeah, steep learning curve, that one. Just touching on this season, Stephen, in terms of how you feel it's gone, what have you been pleased with, and what have the major frustrations been as far as you're concerned?
Definitely been pleased with when we're on, and everyone can see that we're working our absolute backsides off in the games. And it's also good to see so many WA girls in the squad. I think that's not me just saying that to appease an audience. It's genuinely, I think, for the team to be successful, the WA contingent of the team needs to be strong and needs to be developing. So then the next kids can see that there's a genuine pathway and a genuine opportunity for them to play for glory. So that's also been really good. I think our 3 wins that we've had have been pretty special wins, to be honest. I know that sounds really like basic, but if you look at them, all 3, we've scored 3 goals. We've had to score 3 goals to win. The opposition's had a red card. So they've been pretty emotional affairs, particularly the Brisbane one. I thought that was a massive win. The Adelaide game was a huge win. And then, that Newcastle game, that was tough, but it was a really good day at HBF, and it was our first time as a team at HBF. So they've been good. And then I think we've left, to be honest, I've counted between 8 and 9 points out on the field there. We've been a little bit unlucky, but we've got ourselves to blame in some other instances where we've left points out on the pitch, and we probably could have done a little bit better.
Media-wise, you seem to have taken to that like a duck to water. No issues on that front?
Well, in my sports business degree, I did quite a bit of media training, so I know a little bit about it, like not to look at the camera. That's always the best one when you see people, they get interviewed and they go. It's always the first one. No, but I think it's what I've really, really enjoyed about Glory is that we actually get some coverage, and there's an interest, particularly from the West Australian, which is great. And they seem to actually care. And then, those results where, we've done well, and then the various media channels are in the room, they seem actually genuinely happy for us, which is really good.
You've been excellent. I said you adapted really, really well to it, because it is, I suppose it is I imagine like a step up in terms of the level of exposure from what you would have experienced at Macarthur.
Yeah, but it's good. Like you always, as a coach, that's probably the bit that you always look forward to. I think, I'm the kind of guy that when you go to stadium tours in the UK, like as soon as we go to the press room, I'm like that's the part that excites me. The leather chairs, and then you just picture that Mourinho's sitting there, and like it's pretty special, really. So yeah, I'm in a privileged position as a head coach of a football team. Not a lot of people get to have that opportunity to do that. And then obviously our members and fans want to hear from myself and from the players about what we're thinking and how we're feeling. And I try to be as genuine as I can, and try not to make too many excuses. There's been a few, but hopefully people can see that we genuinely are trying our best, and that we want to have success long term.
All right, just I suppose zooming back out a little bit, if you had if you were the supreme controller of A-League Women's,
Yep.
what one change would you make to ALW?
I think the scheduling needs to be looked at. I think the way they schedule the competition is a bit bogus. You know, like you got one team from Perth that travels and has short turnovers, and then they got to look at that. There's got to be a better way. I think the refereeing these days is unfortunately very much based on VAR principles, where it's a retrospective refereeing. I think referees genuinely have lost the feel for the game. So I think there needs to be something there in terms of either VAR or they have some kind of situation where coaches can get some feedback on the run, looking at the iPad and showing like at least some kind of dialogue, because I think that really, I think that's not up to standard. And I think they need to play games in small stadiums. I think the whole league should play in small stadiums. So I think the biggest stadiums need to be, your 20,000 seater stadiums, because outside of that, I think you're robbing the genuine fans of an atmosphere, I believe. You look at Sam Kerr, for example, on a women's night, it's brilliant. Yeah, I think that stuff's fantastic. We played in Coopers last week, and it was pretty empty at the start. Obviously, once the men's crowd comes in, it's good, but the double headers are good. But I just genuinely think that they've got to have purpose-built stadiums for football.
No, I totally agree. Couldn't agree more on that one. You just mentioned coaches there. Have you got coaches within the ALW that you're particularly close to, and equally, have you developed a nemesis yet? That's the real question here.
I'd say my only nemesis is probably Emily Husband, I'd say. Nothing bad, but we've got, an existing rivalry from MPL, so that's probably someone that you kind of want to get on top of that coach in the game. You definitely want to try and win those games, and I'm sure she probably feels the same way, although I don't think she'd admit it personally.
I like the way you've gone nemesis first. I'm enjoying that.
Yeah, well, she's probably, it's not a dislike. It's just someone that you would really like to beat. I think Sydney FC is an interesting one. I've never really liked Sydney FC from the outset, and that's not saying I hate them, but being a Sydney Olympic supporter as a kid, I grew up supporting Olympic my whole life. And then all of a sudden in 2005, you're told your team doesn't exist anymore, and then this is the new team you're going for, and it was Sydney FC. So we're like, okay, well, I'm not going to like them, am I? But I obviously genuinely respect them as an organisation, but it's always nice beating them, so I'd have to say that Ante's probably another nemesis. Other than that, I think it's all pretty good.
I'm not sure what the plural for nemesis is. I don't know if it's nemesis or nemesi, but
well, I'd say if you asked Ante who he wants to beat, I don't know if I'd be on his list yet, but yeah, I think definitely them. I would definitely like to. I'm looking forward to playing Melbourne City again. I think that's, I feel like we did so well in the first half of that game, first 2/3 of that game, and that's definitely someone I'm looking forward to playing again. But realistically, through a network, you build relationships with coaches. So like Ant from Canberra was on my A license with me, so I got a pretty good relationship with him. Adelaide, I know the assistant coach pretty well, is on the A license with me as well. So then through him, I've built an appreciation for Adelaide. So there's that. And then I just sort of kind of judge the coaches on the way that they approach you. So, for example, there's been very minimal coaches this year that have actually stood up and come to you and shook your hand before the game. So I'm not sure if they're across the etiquette there. I don't know. But
That's interesting.
every single game that we host at home, I'm always the first person to go over and make sure that they feel welcomed and that sort of stuff. But I think the interesting one is after the game, you would think that the coaches would shake hands first, and then obviously they can share their, the moment with their coaching staff and stuff. But I've actually noticed a bit of a trend that most coaches actually shake all of their coaching staff's hand before they come to the opposition coach's hand, which is quite interesting.
Not really the go, is it?
Yeah, well, I'm not trying to create enemies or anything, but I think that stuff goes a long way.
I agree.
Just to meet the person halfway and look them in the eye and say, "Well done," or "Good job," or
Yeah, you would think
I
that would be
don't,
standard.
or I don't like you, or whatever it is. So there's a bit of work to do there, and I think that, as Mourinho would say, that's football heritage. I think.
I would agree. Now, we are coming towards the end, mate, but I did just want to quickly run through our regular segment with you, which is the Dream Car Rental Dream Team. We had a couple of discussions around this. You've gone for, I believe, after a bit of to and fro, you've gone for a women's team, but you are allowed to play yourself, so it's effectively a mixed team. We need a proper goalkeeper, 5 other players. Let's go. Let's smash these players out. Who are you going for?
Well, this is extremely tough because, I've got loyalties to a lot of my Rams players, but it is a 6-a-side team. So it's interesting as well. I'd have to go, my midfield 3 from MacArthur Rams have to be there. So Darcy Malone, Bethany Gordon and Mel Caceres definitely have to be there. So then there's me, so that's 4. So I've got 2 more.
It's a heavy midfield in a 6-a-side team, yes.
So it's very difficult. Which ultimately that means I'm at the back defending. So goalkeepers, I would have to say Sham Khamis would be my goalkeeper. And then we're going to need a talisman, a scorer. I think my welfare, my genuine well-being will be up for debate if I don't pick this person. It's probably going to have to be Kelly Brown, I'd say.
Right. Yeah, because Kelly will probably listen to this, and
Yeah.
if you haven't picked her.
So I know it's a pretty heavily stacked Rams team. I'd love to get. Can I pick a bench?
You could have 2.
2. Georgia Cassidy's got to be on there. Definitely. Imagine her in a small-sided football game. Unbelievable. And I think I'm going to go with Grace Johnston, I think.
Plenty of energy and quality on that bench. No, that is some team. Mate. Thank you very much for sharing. And
I'm going to get myself into
I
trouble
was
off
going
that
to say,
one.
taking the risk of incurring the wrath of various players that you've left out. So, brave man. Some brave choices there. But, mate, it's been absolutely fantastic having you in. Thanks very much for your honesty. I especially enjoyed the chat around your nemesises in the dugouts.
Yeah, I'm sure they were going to probably come back and bite me, those ones. But
It'll
anyway.
be good to see how that unfolds over the rest of the season, and in particular the handshakes and so on. I'll be keeping a closer eye on that at the start and the end of games. But it's been an absolute pleasure, mate. Thank you very much indeed for coming in. Thanks as well to everyone who has been downloading on the podcast platforms. Also, everyone who is subscribing on the YouTube channel. Please continue to do that and leave us a rating and a review as well. I'd like to thank Jeff and Jack for their technical expertise in making the podcast possible, and also not forgetting Drimtel, our official podcast sponsors, and your connection to possibilities. We will be back very soon indeed, next week in fact, with another episode of Glory Stories. In the meantime, go well and go glory.